Hello, and welcome to this episode of Redefining the Customer Journey, where we take a deep dive into how anyone from a local small business owner up to a corporate CEO can build a modern business that is flexible and able to quickly adapt and evolve. Specifically, in this episode, we're going to give you some major takeaways on the topic of automation workflows. It's a very deep topic, and we're going to go ahead and stay real tight and on point. With these easy to implement principles we're going to teach you, you're going to be able to make more money while saving hundreds of hours by implementing a few simple steps. We've all seen businesses collapse because they were built on weak foundations, riddled with problems in their day to day, which are also unnecessarily complex to grow and scale. We want to help you build something that leverages your time and resources for maximum effectiveness without sacrificing your customer experience. I'm Paul Sokol, founder of BPro, best-selling author of the Infusionsoft cookbook, which contains over 80 CRM-based business recipes for automated follow-up. And I've been helping small to medium-sized businesses under 50 million grow with automation since 2008.
And I'm Bobby Purcell, founder of LeapPass.com, which helps you set your business processes on autopilot to free up more time for sales. And I've been in automation since 2016, primarily in the financial space. In each episode, we're going to cover one specific CRM topic to explain what it is, why it's important, common problems, and what the best solution we've seen throughout the experience. And as we mentioned, today's episode is going to be all about automated workflows and how to use them.
Yes.
So what is a workflow, Paul?
Well, I would say that one easiest way to think about it, like not from a technology standpoint, is just think about that biological stimulus response thing, where there's stimulus and then there's some kind of response. And so inside a CRM, I would say that an automated workflow is the programmed action or a set of actions that is triggered by some other kind of event. Uh,
And another thing about that too is a lot of the time they don't have to be customer facing.
yes.
So a lot of the things that you'll see with a workflow is all internal. So this is kind of like the engine that runs the car. Most people will never actually stop and look at the engine if they're the passenger in the vehicle.
Yes. So that's what an automated workflow is here. So why is this stuff important? I mean, first of all, and I think I've said this in a couple episodes, business is all about relationships. And so automation is letting you do relationships at scale. And it really is that secret sauce to having a great business.
If we look at this, it will help you a lot, pretty much in every single area of your business, whether that's onboarding new people or walking through a sales process. Automations are the building blocks, the foundation of all of the processes within your business. It helps you, it's easy to use, it can reduce human error, and it tracks all the activity that goes on within the CRM itself.
Yes. Yes. And pretty like you said, pretty much any part of the business, whether it's like a marketing journey or a sales journey or the fulfillment journey, it's going to help you save time. And it's also going to streamline or even possibly remove some of the manual actions. That way your business can work for you. So if you think about the tasks that you're currently doing manually right now, you can think about how you might replace them through automation or at least supplement what you're doing with automation. That's how you save time and money. And so, like, I'll give you a perfect example. Something I did this week. Got a client. She did a summit, and she did video interviews with the speakers, and she needed to get the video recording to each of the, I don't know, 20 or so speakers, right? And so we built a mechanism. So this is internal, right? Like we were talking, this works for internal. This was nothing her customers saw. But we built a very simple mechanism where all she did was copy and paste the video link. And as soon as she submitted it into the CRM, not only did it put that record on the speaker's contact to track that activity, it also immediately sent out an email saying, hey, thanks for speaking at the summit. Here's your video recording, blah, blah, blah. And so, huge time saver. No manual emails, and she didn't have to do any duplication of information. She copied the link once, pasted it, and it did like 3 different things. So, anyway, that's ground level ideas. So that's why this stuff is important. So let's talk about some of the common issues, Bobby, which we can go ahead and talk about this forever, but we're gonna honor your time, listener and viewer, and try and keep this real succinct and tight. So, just what are some of the things that you
Yeah.
see?
So
You have
one of
much
the
time.
most common issues that I see, yeah, well, that's really the issue here. So, but one of the main issues when it comes to workflows is they can do so many different things that sometimes people get confused, or they will repeat processes over and over again throughout the build of their whole sales process or what actions they're looking to do, instead of going into it as, and we've talked about this already in another episode, but the building phase. So before you start to go and say, okay, I want to build this workflow, you should think of, okay, I'm going to build this workflow to have this result. Why am I doing that result? Do I need any other workflows around that? What are the automations that I require? And building a solid plan so that you don't have to have different workflows as well that are conflicting each other. So if you have this one workflow and it does A, and you have this workflow and it does B, and then you have C workflow that does a little bit of A and a little bit of B, you're going to end up coming into issues over time. And then the questions and testing it out is kind of a huge issue as well.
Yeah, yeah, that's a huge takeaway. And I would say the number one thing is you got to have a solid plan in place before you start building. And not only do you need to have a solid plan, a common issue when planning itself, I see people losing focus on not only what the customer experience is, but also what the internal experience needs to be. So if somebody on your team or whatever needs to do something in the middle of this, if you don't factor that into your plan, like you said, it could create like conflicting automation or duplicate automation, or even just making it really hard to test, and ultimately that creates just a weird customer experience, right? So always plan and always make sure that you're focusing on both the customer's experience and the internal team's experience in that plan, um, which I guess is the solution against that common issue where people don't focus. Um,
Yeah, so just make sure that you're always really clear on what the workflow does, the naming, and what the possible outcomes that you want to achieve by having that workflow. And that'll eliminate a lot of the problems moving forward.
Yes. And so naming is really good. So we did, if you look back at episode 3, we dove super hard into naming conventions, and then episode 4 we talked about the custom fields, which is like the data, because that's also another common issue with automations is overwriting data on accident. And so sometimes that's intentional. And so you just want to plan for that. If there's a field that's going to be overwritten over and over again, maybe you leave a note at a certain point in the automation that says, hey, here's what the data was at this point. And then if it gets overwritten in the future, cool, you'll have that history of it. And then if you really want to dive hardcore into planning, go back to episode 2, because that kind of is the foundation for all of this stuff here. Um, and when you're planning as well, don't try to do too much too soon. That's another really common issue. You'll have people that are they're trying to do everything all at once, when really version one is better than version none. That's something that we used to say when I was a product manager. So it's totally okay with just getting an automation out there that saves you a little bit of time and automates a little bit of the communication, and not doing the whole thing at once. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither are most automations. So there's nothing wrong with launching something, using it, and then as you use it, figure out how to enhance it. I personally believe that your automation is never done, and there's always ways to enhance it. It's like a theme park. Like a theme park is never in its final form. There's just always new things coming, new rides. They're enhancing the shops, whatever. But you do have to get one version. So a big takeaway for these common issues is just don't try to automate too much too soon, especially if you're brand new. It's better to keep it simple and then get more complex from there.
And that kind of brings us back to episode 2, where we walk through, like, start at the minimum viable product,
Mm-hmm.
walk through stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Give yourself timelines of, this is what I want to accomplish by this date. Let's launch it, test it, okay, and then attack the second stage, and then the third stage, and the fourth stage. So you have something that's up and running. Might not be the perfect solution at the time, but it's at least something. And then over time you refine it.
Yes, yes, and I say that'll be one last common issue before we wrap up with some of the best solutions. But don't make the triggering event too complicated, because it's automation, it's stimulus response. So somebody fills out a web form on a website, like a contact us form, and then you want to go ahead and spit out an opportunity into a pipeline or something, which we're going to talk about pipelines in the next episode. Um, but that's something I see a lot. They'll make the thing that causes the automation just be way more complicated. Something that and to demonstrate this, there's two ways to touch your nose. And I don't know if I've ever done this with you, Bobby. And so if you're just listening to this, you can touch your nose, or I can wrap my entire arm around my head and touch my nose, right? Um, don't wrap your arm around your head just to trigger some automation, at least not at the beginning. You can always advance and get more complex over time. So those are some of the common issues that we've seen. So, and we've talked about some of the best solutions, but let's really dive into those, especially for people that are newer, because this really is the secret sauce, and the bread and butter is your automation. Doesn't matter the CRM you use. You know, this is the good stuff.
So yeah, this comes back down to the planning stage of episode 2 when we talked about it. You should have this entire workflow section where you want to write down exactly what you want to accomplish, why you want to accomplish it, and in what order from start to finish does that fall. And a lot of the times what you do is you do it in a side program. So something as easy as like a Canva, you could do it in, or a Google Docs or a Google Sheets, line by line, exactly what you want to achieve and what is the steps to get to that endpoint. So write out everything you want to do for the workflows and write them out together, because you want to make sure that workflow A and workflow E don't hinder the other one from working properly, and the step-by-step process of doing it. And it all comes back to the planning stage. If you do the planning stage properly, workflows are super easy to get into. So I would say that would probably be the best solution. Just make sure your planning is right and you know what you want the workflow to accomplish before getting into it.
Yes, you want to plan that stuff out before you start building, because this is going to help you get ahead of stuff and avoid issues. It's almost like I equate it to being a movie director. They storyboard out the whole movie, and that's where they figure out, okay, here's what we're going to do. Oh, hey, in this shot we're going to need like this practical effect or this special effect. So like you can start working on that when you're planning out your automations, especially if it's dealing with other third party tools. You can indicate in your plan, this is where this other thing's going to come into play. And you can get ahead of it and avoid painting yourself into a corner. Which, as far as painting yourself into a corner, another highly recommended solution for this is that whenever we're writing emails or text messages or that kind of stuff, write all of that stuff outside the CRM, just in some kind of document that's not the software. Because what this does is this allows you to focus on what you're trying to say, and really get into the messaging of it rather than be in the software and distracted by like writing. So that's huge. And then plus, if it's in like a separate document and you have a team, that's where collaboration can happen. You can do edits, and you can fuddy duddy around with all the words there. And then once it's finalized, then it's very quick and easy to get into your automation. Nothing's worse than writing emails in the system directly, and then someone goes in there and they're making edits in there. There's no need for that. You can very much do an assembly line, write the emails in a document, and then you can completely hand it off to somebody else in your team to load it up into the system. And so that's a huge tip for getting the stuff out the door quickly too.
And at the same time, like when you're doing those emails, you don't want to go ahead and say, okay, I'm going to upload these emails from this document and all my text messages, and then I'm just going to run with the automation. The first thing that you should do is do a small batch, because the worst thing that could possibly happen is you send out 10,000 emails or text messages and there's typos in it, or there's errors, or there's merge fields that didn't work. So you're sending out to the wrong individual person. And it's simpler is always the best when it comes to these things. So let's start with a minimum viable product. Again, on stage 1, we'll go ahead and just do, okay, I want to send my email to anyone who has these tags, holiday cheer, whatever you want to call it. You send out, you build the automation, you pull in the data from the emails and the text messages from your other piece of documents. and then you send it to like 5 people. You make sure it works, and then you can go ahead and push out the entirety of it and then make it more complicated as you go. But it's always way easier to add more people to that email list or that text message automation rather than go back and say, sorry, I sent you the wrong thing to
Yeah.
10,000 people at a time.
Yeah, and that's a big takeaway is make sure that when you're doing testing, you do testing as a proper contact in the system. Because every single one of these tools will let you, send a test email, send a text test message or something, but that's not always exactly how it's going to be when somebody's full blown in the automation. So when you're doing testing, put yourself into it, put your team into it, and again, do those tests of small batches just to make sure it works. Literally, I ran into that this week. I'm running a training. It's the middle of December when we're recording this right now, and in my email, in the very first email, I said October in the subject line. If I had sent myself that email as a test, I would have immediately caught that, and I just did not because I didn't take my own advice here because we had our messaging doc and we approved it with me and the guy I'm working with, and neither of us caught the fact that it said October. But if I had sent myself a test, I would have immediately been like, oh, that subject line is borked. So, um, yeah, testing is huge. We're let's wrap up here because we could talk about this all day, Bobby. So we got a couple more
Yeah,
best
this is a big
solutions here.
one.
This is a huge topic. This could probably be a whole season in itself. But so, what are some other best solutions to make sure your automated workflows are badass and cool?
I think that as you progress in automations, what doesn't matter what type of niche you're in, what type of service business, whether you're in finance or if you're doing a 20 location franchise, it all comes down to the customer journey. And you need to build it slowly in pieces, test it, and progressively improve it over time. And not worry about, hey, I need to do these 50,000 things in a 30-day window. It's I need to accomplish this at stage one now, and then okay, let's plan for the next 60 days, and then the 30 days after that, and the 60 days after that, because it's too much to test in such a short period of time, and it's always better to just get it started and fixed in pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like building a Lego house.
Yeah,
Start at the foundation and then just work your way up.
yeah, absolutely. Which that's a really good takeaway is to automate the customer journey in pieces and to make your life easier, separate your automation models at the major breakpoints or the natural breaking points. So when I'm doing like a marketing, sales, and fulfillment automation, the sales automation ends when they make the purchase because that's the end of the sales journey, and then that sales starts the fulfillment automation. You again, simpler is better, and there's uh, there's actually what am I trying to say? Um, it's very easy to make a big, complex, fancy-looking workflow or a campaign or whatever, but then it's a nightmare to test, and there'll be bugs in it and stuff like that. Simpler is better, and just even if you have like 20 different separate automations for whatever reason, if the customer experience is doing what you need it to do, fine. There's no laws against it. So make sure you're separating your models and natural breakpoints. And depending on the CRM you're using, you might be forced to do that as well. Just because how the stuff functions. Like certain systems will let you have like multiple goals and things you can chain together. Others have like a single goal, and like that's the end of the workflow. So that's also where planning is critical too. Like identifying what are those breakpoints. Um, so uh,
I
what
think this is
else?
when we say, thank you so much for watching, everyone. And if you have any questions, please let us know in the comments. And make sure you watch the next episode where we're going to be talking about pipeline stages and automating the sales process through opportunities. Which be sure to subscribe now if you haven't already and don't miss it. And if you want to learn more about the customer journey, get Paul's free How to Automate Like a Pro mini course. And if you want some pre-built customer journey automations through snapshots, check them out below. And the links to get either one of them are in the description. And we'll see you next time.